Hi, this is Pratik and welcome to Code Verify. In this video lesson, we'll learn about the queue data structures using Python. So I will start with giving an example of queue. You can think of a queue like, suppose that someone is distributing something, and to get that thing, all the people start aligning themselves in a queue. And the person who is standing at the first is served first. Now, you can take the example of a ticket counter in which people are aligning themselves in a queue. Now the person who is standing at the front of the queue will be served first with the ticket. Similarly, if a new person wants to come in and get a ticket, then that person has to go at the back of the queue, which means he has to append himself at the back of the queue, and this appending operation is called as enqueue operation. Similarly, when the person standing at the front of the queue gets the ticket, he pops himself out of the queue, and this thing is called dequeue. So there are two operations. The first one is enqueue, where you enqueue into the queue, and the second one is dequeue, where you dequeue elements out of the queue. If you observe that both the enqueue and the dequeue operation are happening from the opposite sides, and in general we also say that queue performs FIFO, which stands for first in, first out. So yeah, it is indeed first in, first out, because the person coming in first will be served first. So this was the entire story of queue, and now let's implement it in Python. So first I am going to make a class queue, and in this class queue I'm going to define a constructor, and in this constructor I'm going to define an empty list, and that empty list I'm going to call as queue. So remember that in Python you can implement both stack and queue by using a list, and as I have already told you that there are two major operations, that is enqueue and dequeue. So for enqueue I'm going to define a function, and in that function I'm going to pass the data as a parameter, and this is the data that I want to enqueue inside the queue. And since I want to enqueue inside the queue, so I'm going to take the reference of the queue that, or the list that I want to append in. So I want to append my data in this queue, which is already defined as an empty list here. So I append the data at the last. So remember, this append actually puts data at the last of the queue. So I'm done with the enqueue operation. Now it's time to perform the dequeue operation. That is, you pop out the data from the front of the queue. So before popping the data from the front of the queue, you first have to see if the queue is already empty or not. So in case the queue is empty, and that you can see by finding what is the length of the queue. So if the length of the queue comes out to be 0, which means it's empty, and if it's empty, then in that case you cannot pop from the queue. So I'm going to simply write a print statement signifying that sorry, the queue is empty and you cannot pop out from the queue. Else if the queue is not empty, then for sure you can dequeue from the queue, and in that case I am going to dequeue, and you can simply dequeue by using the pop operation in Python. So you dequeue from the front. So remember that you have enqueued at the last, which means you're going to dequeue from the front, because both enqueue and dequeue operations take place from opposite side. So you dequeue from the front, and front is denoted by the 0th index. And now if you want, you can also print out the dequeued element, and then you can say that the dequeued element is this I that we collected here. So this pop actually pops out, and at the same time it returns the popped element, and that popped element you can store in I. Now there are two more operations associated with queue, and those are, the first is front, which means you want to peek inside the queue, and then you want to find out what is located at the front of the queue. And finding that out is very simple. You simply have to print whatever is at the 0th index of the queue. There is one more operation called as rear, which means you want to find out what is at the last position of the queue. And to find out what is at the last position of the queue, you simply have to print what is at index -1, because index -1 is actually the last position. So in a list, in a Python list, so indexes go like this. So if you want to go from left to right, the indexes are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But if you want to go from right to left, then the indexes are -1, -2, -3, where -1 is for the last element inside the list. So this is the indexing convention in a list in Python. So if I want to see what's in the rear, you're going to simply print out what is at the index -1. Now it's time to print the q. So I'm going to print, if I want to print the q, I'm going to make a new function, and in this function I'm going to simply print the q that I built. So this q is actually the list, and in the list things are separated by comma. I've already told you this in the previous tutorial. Since things are separated by comma, so I need to find a way, to print all the elements in a single row. So that's why you put end is equals to this, which means you're gonna print it in a single row. So now it's time to make the q, and for that first I'm going to make the object of the class q, which means the constructor of the class q, which is this, it runs automatically and it builds an empty queue or an empty list. And now I'm going to make use of the enqueue function that I defined earlier, and I am simply going to enqueue this data 1, 2, 3 and 4. And after this I am simply going to print the queue, and let me just show you what is the result. So I'm going to save this and run this. So I see that this is the queue that is being formed, and that is in the form of a list. Now I want to move further, and this time I want to perform the dequeue operation. And after performing the dequeue operation, I'm again interested in printing out the queue. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to run this. So you see that this was the queue, and then you popped out 1, and the remaining new queue becomes this, which means you popped out from the front. So 1 got popped out from the front, and this is the remaining queue that is we are left with. If you want, you can also just print out the front and the rear, and it will come out as accordingly. So in this case, the leftover were 2, 3, 4, which means the front will come out as 2 and the rear will come out as 4. So I'm just going to add a new line here so that the output looks a bit nice. So I'm going to save this and I am going to run this. So this will come at, so it's going to come at this here. Alright, so I'm going to save this and I'm going to run this. So yeah, so you see that the last, that is the rear, was 4 and the front is 2. Alright, so this is how everything is done in enqueue and dequeue, as enqueue and dequeue operation in a queue. So I hope that you understood this video. Like and share this video, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.